This is the Dane Moore NBA podcast. We're brought to you by Prize Picks. Coming at you Wednesday night. It's May 22nd after the Wolves dropped game one at home against Dallas, 108-105. I got Kyle Theige here with me for another post-game pod. Kyle, obviously, a lot of that game was going in the Wolves' direction, not a one-sided loss or anything like that. Nothing to really, I think, make you believe that the Wolves are really chasing in a major way in this series, but it was a game they could have won for sure. How much of a missed opportunity did you see game one to be for the Wolves?
Probably say this a lot in terms of being caught up in the moment, but I thought that was the most interesting game of the whole playoffs because there's an angle we can talk about that the Wolves didn't play well and they only lost by 3. And then there's another angle where, I think they crushed them from 3, had less turnovers, had more free throws made, and they still lost. So in terms of was it a missed opportunity? Absolutely. Does it change how I think the series goes long term? Not really. But as much as this team has become more mature and been, more cohesive in tight moments and all that stuff, they still don't really embrace the easy. And I thought tonight they had an opportunity with how Jaden played or how Kyle played. If any of their, big 3, I guess, right, of like Rudy even or Carl or Ant would have kind of joined the party, it would have been easy because you would have defended home court, you would have got that first win, and you've been one game closer to making the finals. But despite all the good stuff that this team has showed us all year, including what they just did 72 hours ago in Denver, they still haven't mastered that. So yes, missed opportunity, puts more pressure on them now on Friday night, game 2 at home, but I still see this thing extending well deep into the series and into next weekend.
You mentioned the Denver game being 72 hours ago, and fatigue obviously a factor in that. We can talk about that a little bit later. Ant and Kat both talked about that a bit. I don't think I had that super on my radar as something, to be in this one, but it does make sense, right? Dallas did get one more day at least there. I think it kind of led to the Wolves not playing in their normal rhythm, their normal guys doing their normal things. And I think where I just kind of want to start with is where, who played well offensively and who struggled offensively. So much of our, focus all playoffs has been on all season, right? Has been on the offense. There's a bankable element to the Wolves defense. I don't think the defense was a 10 out of 10 or anything tonight, but it's always solid, and it kind of ends up so many times being the result of Wolves games end up being a product of what type of offense they get to. And often, how much Jaden McDaniels helps or hurts them, how much Kyle Anderson helps or hurts them, how much of a spark Naz Reid gives them off the bench. Well, on my played well offensively list, those are the 3 guys. Jaden, obviously, a special night. I mean, maybe is one of his best offensive performances of his career. Kyle Anderson comes in and is impactful. We kind of knew he was going to have more of a role in this series as, he was going to take some of the Luka matchup there, and then Naz had a couple little boomlets throughout the game offensively. Which of those 3 guys do you want to start with playing well? We'll start on a positive note.
I think we should start with Jaden, but in case we get too far down the path here on that whole 72 hours and the Denver thing, I actually had a cool stat here, but teams who come off a 7-game series are now 33-57 in game ones since 1988, the year I was born. Teams that win game 7 are 36-52 in the following series altogether, so not always great numbers for a Wolves team that is coming off a game 7, a Mavericks team that did it in 6. But back to Jaden, it was just the most confident he's looked. Obviously, he kind of found some rhythm towards the end of that Denver series, but he had a 3 in the corner, Dane, in the second half where Luka was right in his space, and I didn't think he was even going to shoot it, let alone make it, and he just took it and made it. He also was just, I think he was 4 for 4 from 3 to start. He was kind of active all over the place. He was also on the boards a little bit. I remember one time where he got an offensive rebound, just kind of put it back up, finished with 4 rebounds, but For him, that's like really good. I just thought 9 for 15, 6 for 9 from 3. You just haven't gotten a lot of those. You would hope moving forward, big picture, long term, that this is kind of more of who Jaden can be. But
Right.
that's the one. We can talk about Nas and we can obviously talk about Kyle, but that's the one where, to what you've said for the last 8 months, Jaden is like the barometer of what they do on offense. And if I would have told you post game, hey, he had 24 points on 9 of 15 shooting, you'd be like, all right, how much did they win by?
Right. It's
So
kind
to
of the
drop
first game
that-
he hasn't been
Yeah.
the barometer. Yeah.
So to drop that, I mean, that kind of goes back to my theme for the next hour is basically going to be a lot of glass half full, glass half empty, depending on how you want to look at it. Because those other 3 guys, I mean, literally, Jaden, Kyle, and Nas all stepped up and gave them a big game, but they got very little from, again, their big 3, and then Mike was bad too. So to lose a game when Jaden plays like that is tough, but I also, and I'm biased, but I don't think that that's like a flash in the pan. I think he's, as Finch said, he's got a good vein right now.
He's in a good vein.
Okay, that's different phrasing. But he is, like, he's in a rhythm. He's just taking, even pregame, when you watch all those guys do their warm-ups and stuff, like, he just wasn't really missing. He seems to have a good rhythm about himself in addition to the defense he's playing. So you might be able to bank on that for more than just one night. But again, to lose a Jaden podium game like that is a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah, no, I mean that is a missed opportunity. And I wanted to start with that because I want to give Jaden his flowers because that was somewhat unexpected, right? You expect things from him defensively, and then obviously the Kyle one was unexpected as well. I think Kyle and Jaden had almost as many points. I think they had 30 combined points at halftime, and Kyrie and Luka, who were going off, or Kyrie was going off in the first half. I think they had 33. So it's like that should buoy so much of your offense, provided you're getting really anything from Anthony Edwards and or Karl Anthony Towns, and they didn't. Not in an efficient way, at least. I thought the rim protection was so big, particularly once Lively got in there. It just he's big. He's also fast, and there was, remember that like first time where like Karl tried to like take him off the dribble and Lively just kind of like stayed on his hip and contested, maybe tipped the shot there. And I remember like when I think it was when Rudy wasn't in the game, so Lively's on him, and we see that so rarely of, Cat having a 5 on him, and that's normally like time for Cat to cook, you know, and he, 90% of the time what he does in those situations. But Lively's probably got height, length, and speed on Karl. Karl obviously has force there. But he just got, Lively was in the way of like kind of disrupting those drives from Karl Anthony Towns. Who do you have his final stat line in front of you?
Yeah, Cat finished with 16 points, 7 rebounds, 2 assists, but he shot 6 for 20 from the field and 2 for 9 from 3.
Yeah, I mean, so what is that? So then that's 4 for 11 from 2. I mean, that can't happen. And it needs to be an area in which, he can, impact the rim. And I thought Gafford and particularly Lively made it difficult for him there. Just didn't really get that offensive rhythm. Like, yeah, honestly, after that one play on Lively, he seemed like a little reticent to play off the catch, which Karl's a big part of this series on the offensive side of the floor. It's a different series than Phoenix, where he has the KD matchup, and it's like, okay, put 80% of your effort into that, or the Jokic one, put like 99% of your effort into that. Karl has to kind of like unravel his offense a little bit more, show more of what he's got. I think he was looking for it, so I think that's a good sign. But I think it's just a very different front court that these guys are seeing than they saw against Phoenix or Denver.
Full of life and energy, active and outgoing. That's literally the definition of Lively. And that's exactly how he played, right? It was funny because I was thinking in the game, it's kind of a weird place to pivot, but that's probably exactly because, for those maybe unaware, because this is a different Mavericks team than the Wolves had played. Lively was on it, but Derek Lively's a rookie out of Duke. The Mavs kind of tanked for him. Remember that?
Yeah.
And they kind of tanked out of the play-in last year. But Dane, he's what Golden State wanted James Wiseman to do. just set hard screens, protect the rim, and just kind of be active. Like, I thought Lively's best play, going back to the Mavs for a sec, was like, I think the Wolves were up 4 with like 3 minutes left. They forced Kyrie to take a tough shot. Rudy contests it, and then Lively just gets the offensive rebound amongst 4 guys, including Carl, Jaden, and Rudy, and then kicks it out to Luka. That's all they want him to do. They just want him to protect the rim, and to your point, it's a complete, I mean, you asked him post-game, this is not Nurkic, this is not Jokic. This is a completely different front court that the Wolves are messing with right now. Just a bunch of tough, physical guys that can shoot the three a little bit, like with PJ Washington, but just with Lively, it's just activity. And they're not used to, they're the active guys, right? They're the ones that crash the boards and get all the rebounds and stuff. So for a Wolves team that has prided themselves not only on defense, but rebounding, I mean, they were out rebounded tonight 48-40, and they gave up 11 offensive rebounds, and those were killers. And Lively had a lot to do with that. I mean, he comes off the bench, but he leads the entire game with 11 rebounds, 4 of them on the offensive end. So he was fantastic, 4 for 4 from the field. He wasn't their best player, but he was kind of the third banana for their big 3 tonight.
Yeah, you mentioned, I'll play that clip here in a second, where Ant was talking about the difference of the centers from the first 2 series to this one with what Gafford and Lively present. I think if you just look at Ant's box score and you see 16 shot attempts and 12 of them were threes, that is, like, you really need to watch the game to know that something different was happening in the coverages, and Ant kind of explained that in his answer here.
And you took a lot of threes tonight. Is that their rim protection that is affecting your shot selection, or how did you see your offense kind of come together?
I mean, they're down the floor. The big man he's not super high up like the last 2 series, and we didn't really know what to expect. I mean, so came off and was open a bunch of times and took the shots, and I'll make them next time. I live with it.
So, what we saw, right, Kyle, with Nurkic or Jokic in the first 2 rounds was any sort of ball screen for Ant. That's that we talked about putting 2 on him, right? Mm-hmm. The big's up there to show, to get the ball out of Ant's hands, and that gets the ball moving and and theoretically gets the defense in rotation. When you play drop coverage, that's the more conservative coverage. You are letting them come to you rather than attacking them, whether that be at the point of attack or like closing out the shooters. So if you're Ant, you almost get it. You're like, man, I haven't come off of like a high screen in a month and not had a big there, So he's pulling, which I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with Ant taking 8-9 pull up threes. Like, just he hits those at a high clip. But it needs to be, like kind of in conjunction. If he's going to take 8, 9, 10 of those, he's also got to take, 8, 9, 10 from elsewhere. Can he get into the mid range there with the rhythm dribble and pull up and hit some of those if the big is back? Should he be, attacking all the way into the rim protector there? And I think that's what Ant was kind of talking about after the game. He's like, we didn't really know what it was going to be. Like, he didn't really have a comfort with how and where he wanted to attack, because kind of like head down, get into the lane has kind of been a no-no for a month, right? Because that's where the gap help is, and that's where Phoenix and Denver were loading up on him, stripping him, or that was their hope. Well, now there's a little bit more of a runway to, again, either to pull or to get downhill and go challenge those guys at the rim. And I think that's going to be a big thing in game 2 is I think Ant will challenge those guys at the rim, and Ant's good, and especially, but Lively again. In person, right? Like,
oh my God, yeah.
He's a big guy,
not as big as Shaq. That one blew me away today. Seeing Shaq stand next to Carl's dad, even who Carl's dad's a big guy, is a big guy. Seeing Shaq on the same court as like Jim Pete was like, oh my God. But Lively literally lives up to the name, and he and on the Ant thing, quick, just because I think it's an important point. I know we're kind of going all over the place, but it's an important point to hammer home. Took 16 shots, and 12 of them were from 3. If you go back and rewatch that game, and I know you will, it just felt like he just wasted a lot of fuel, a lot of his cell phone battery just dribbling. Like, he just couldn't get to the rim. And not only does Dallas protect the rim really well, but they have really active hands. I mean, Kyrie and Luka probably aren't all defensive players. But when they get, sometimes you'll get by them and then they just have really active hands. There's a lot of like forced steals kind of in the paint. So he's going to have to figure it out. I mean, the difference, and this is why at the top I said I'm so excited about this series, is because the Phoenix series, you had a week, right, to kind of figure it out. You had a lot of data against them. You just played them. The Denver series, some people think this team was just built to beat Denver. And you had a week again, or a lot of time to prep. This is, again, they just came off the biggest win maybe in franchise history 72 hours ago, and now you have to speak a completely different language. This Mavs team just has way more firepower than either their first two opponents in my mind, and then just the rotating bigs. I mean, even if you want to talk about Ant quick, I thought Derrick Jones Jr. gave him really good minutes for Dallas. He's not as big as like Aaron Gordon, but he's just long and he's physical. So
he's fast too.
He's impressive. I just don't think. And
I don't think he's gonna I'm not saying he's gonna shut him down.
No.
You're not saying that either. But that was a big what's that gonna look like? Is that gonna be? Remember when KCP guarded Ant last year in the first round, and Denver wasn't providing as much help for him. It was just kind of like, all right, this one's over. You know, like KCP doesn't have anything for Ant, and I think the Derrick Jones Jr. matchup was that going to be to what degree was he going to be able to do enough to make it somewhat difficult? Like, he kind of has the Carl job, right? Of you're not going to stop Anthony Edwards, but can you hold him to under 50% shooting in a game or two, in the series? And yeah, I mean, one for him there. I don't think it was just Derrick Jones Jr., but to get impactful rim protection, right? I kind of learned this last year with Rudy. It's hard for a great rim protector to be a great rim protector if Jalen Noel is at the point of attack. Not to rip, but you know what I'm saying? Like, if it's not if you don't have a strong on-ball defender, then that guy's getting downhill with speed. And I thought Jones moved his feet well, stayed attached to Ant. There was a lot of, to your dribbling point, there was a lot of Ant's trying to get him leaning one direction, and
just working him one way or another. Yeah.
And Jones did a good job. He did a good job staying there. I think the bigger thing was the rim protection, if for no other reason than it seemed to kind of surprise them in that it was new and that those are just better rim protectors there. So I think the offensive question is, how not can you get more from Ant and Cap, but how much more will you get from them offensively? Because if we're being real about it, you're probably not getting the same Jaden game.
Yeah,
again,
right.
You're not getting. I'm probably not getting the same
level.
Kyle Anderson. Yeah, right. I'm with you there. I don't think Jaden's going to go back to, being he's still in the good vein or whatever.
This show is brought to you by Prize Picks, and I would imagine that I will take the over on the 9.5 on his Prize Picks on Friday. So
right.
On the Ant thing, just quick before I forget, to the 16 shot attempts and the 12 from beyond the arc. He took 2 shot attempts in the paint. They're both blocked. One by PJ Washington and one by Kyrie Irving.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just, again, that's kind of an outlier, but he took 2
the
shots in the
hands
paint
and
against what is probably, I know Lively again, and Gafford too played well, but you wouldn't think that this is a big, massive, scary front line, and they just, this is a completely different Mavericks team than they've played in those first 4 games this season. They have a lot of size and a lot of athleticism to back up what it might be the best, starting backcourt in the league.
Speaking of prospects, we can get to our first break here. We want to let people know that we are going to be at Falling Knife tomorrow night, or I guess tonight, Thursday night. We will be there, and Jim Peterson is joining us.
What?
Alex Rodriguez joined us last time, so our guest with me, Britt, and Kyle is going to be Jim Peterson tomorrow, who I know you've had on Flagrant Howls a bunch this year. It's always kind of hard for me in my schedule to get Jim on enough, during the season because he's traveling and all this and that. I'm just really excited to talk hoops with Jim. He's going to be a good one to talk about this game, I think, in particular, along with Britt as well. And these have been fun. These have been really fun when we've been doing these live shows at Falling Knife, and when we did the other one at Dual Citizen a couple weeks ago as well. Just I know a lot of you have been going out many nights a week and watching Wolves games and stuff, and I understand if you're feeling a little fatigued, but just come on, hang out. We're going to talk hoops, have some beers, and then I think the Celtics Pacers game will be on as well. So that's Falling Knife Brewing Company in Northeast Minneapolis. And sorry, I should have said the time. I will do like a happy hour, 6 to 7 o'clock, hang out, talk to some people while we get set up, do the show from 7 to 8:15, something like that.
Listen, bad loss, but 80-degree weather, late May, and setting up Jim as the guest for this one is fire, because tomorrow is going to be a real basketball nerd pod. Like he's either going to tell a lot of stories because he's got a lot of them in the chamber, or I know he's got some thoughts on some adjustments and things to do for game 2. So bring questions, bring an empty stomach, pizza and beer. But we were talking to Jim before tonight's game. He's so excited for tomorrow. So yeah, Falling Knife tomorrow, 6 o'clock, happy hour. And shout out to everyone that went to Falling Knife tonight, because my parents were there and there was like 1,000 people outside. So
crazy, man. That's
long
so
series,
cool.
long series. But yeah, Jim Pete tomorrow in the flesh. Let's get it.
Yes. We're also brought to you by Prize Picks. My one Prize Pick lock pick of the game I chose was Derek Jones Jr. over 8.5 points. He only had 8 points. So I missed that one. But was kind of my thinking there was Derek Jones Jr. is going to be a pretty big factor in this series and play a lot of minutes. I thought that would mean more than 8.5 points. But at Prize Picks, it's a place to put together a daily fantasy lineup. They'll have the new lineups and new numbers up there shortly for game 2. You kind of got a feel for what the series looks like. So go over to Prize Picks and put together a daily fantasy lineup. If you haven't created an account, use the promo code Dane. They will give you a $100 sign up bonus at prizepicks.com or on the Prize Picks app. Kyle, I think the next thing we have to go to is the Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic matchups, how those guys fared. We didn't really know who was going to guard who, how that was going to all work. What ended up happening was Kyrie Irving has a massive first half, 24 points, 11 for 13 from 2-point range, only took 1 3 and missed it. 11 for 13 in the first half. From 2 was nuts. Luka did not have a very strong first half, but he kind of caught his rhythm in the second half, and he had 19 points in the second half, 4 of 8 from 2, 2 for 4 from 3. They passed the baton well, tag teamed in. That's going to be part of this series the whole time. Is can you find? It's good that I don't think either of them were really going simultaneously during the game, but they got enough from Kyrie in the first half for Luka to kind of bring it home in the second half. Let's start, I guess, maybe work backwards, because I thought it was really encouraging how difficult it looked for Luka in the first half. It kind of seemed like in the fourth quarter, he sort of gotten a feel for what Jaden was doing to him. He was just kind of starting to barrel into that a little bit more. They were giving him a couple more foul calls on some similar bumps that weren't getting called in the first half there. But would you agree that it looked like Luka kind of, I don't want to say he figured it out, and now it's just ready to run through it. But I think he definitely got more comfortable, it seemed to me, in the second half.
Yeah, and he said post game too, and this is spot on. Back to Kyrie, that without Kyrie doing what he does in the first half, they're probably down like 15, and the rope probably gets away from him. So I've actually watched a lot of Dallas, especially since the trade deadline, and they've done it both, right? Like they've been able to both cook at the same time, but also kind of do that your turn, my turn thing. But dude, he finished with 30 points on 12 of 23 shooting, and he didn't make a 3. Like that was just some straight rec league shit where it's just like, and if you go back and watch on Kyrie for a second, but back to your Jaden thing, I thought every shot Kyrie made was like really difficult, which he might be the greatest of all time at making difficult shots. But I didn't necessarily think, even watching the highlights back, that he was wide open. He had to really fight for that stuff. To Luka, I just had in my notes that, yeah, it was really difficult for Luka in the first half. And then that fourth quarter, he just hit that 3 I talked about earlier on the lively rebound. It kicks out to him. He's wide open. Ant runs out to contest. Luka waits because he is a absolute sicko, and then waits for Ant to be closer to him to then hit that 3. And that was kind of a pivotal moment. But I'm going to throw it back to you because I think truth serum, Luka would rather be guarded by Ant.
Oh, easy.
So because I think Ant just gives him more of what Dort gave him in the OKC series, just really physicalness. And Luka, again, he'll complain about it for sure, but he loves to just bump like back and forth, because he kind of feels a rhythm with like the physicality. Whereas Jaden, I don't have the tracking numbers, and we'll look at it tomorrow, but I thought Jaden did a really good job on Luka, and I don't know how many of Luka's points in the fourth were on Jaden. I don't know if you have those down, but I just, moving forward, if you're talking about like adjustments, I would just try to pin Jaden as much to Luka as possible because I think Luka struggles a little more with the length. I mean, Jaden tries not to touch him, whereas Ant is like totally all up in his space. Yeah. So
I don't think Ant should guard him at all.
That's what I wrote. I was like, I don't think you should ever have him on there. Now, that means Ant's probably going to have to be on Kyrie a lot, and that's how you get exhausted.
He was in the first half, yep.
Yeah, so there's some things here to kind of look at. But, yeah, if Luka's on the floor, I mean, what was Luka? He was a -9 tonight. But if Luka's on the floor, I think Jaden just has to be pinned to him. Because I still think Jaden, or, Kyle Anderson can give you some good minutes there too. But to me, Jaden is the one guy that you would just say when he's out there, like kind of like Karl and Jokic, when Luka's out there, Jaden's out there, and Jaden just have to guard him.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I need to like kind of think through a little bit of like what they can do. Like, can you get to it in the rotation so Ant never has to take that? I think so. If Kyle Anderson is going to play and survive, I think there's the temptation or like the word out there with a lot of people. Given that Dort did a good job on Luka, the idea was, all right, you got to meet Luka with physicality. And if you're the Wolves, obviously, what's your most physical, at least in stature, guard that you have? It's Ant. And I think I said that this morning when we were recording. I just don't think that's Ant and Lou Dort may like be physically built in similar ways. They just have such completely different games, and particularly when you factor in some of the fatigue stuff there. Also, like I think Luka, if Ant is on him, is going to be able to kind of pull him into that web and draw those fouls. Whereas Jaden is more
Jaden was
like
really good in the first half, like
really good.
Some maybe ticky tack stuff that certain officiating crews, I know we know all of them by name and their birth dates now, but Mark Davis's crew let them play, and Jaden just avoided all of those ticky tack fouls. Mm-hmm. He ended up with 4, but I think 3 of them came in the second half. So Ant gets physical, and to your point, he like starts to rev himself up. Where I think Luka got him twice, just where he just gets him with that pump fake, and then he gets the and one. So I think what we're both saying is just you got to find a way to just have Jaden on him as much as possible without falling out, and then Kyle's the backup. But yeah, I don't like Ant on him, and I also, it's no offense to Nikhil, but I don't think Luka even sees Nikhil.
No, Nikhil's better for Kyrie once you get into that. I mean, where my head is going right now, and maybe it's a little caught in the moment, is I want Ant not on either of them as much as possible. Now that it's still going to be a lot that he's going to have to, because I'm not really sure when it's like starters versus starters. How do you not have Ant on one of the two of them? Maybe Mike Conley on him.
I have an idea. I mean, I think Mike might have been Luka running as much as Mike Conley. They don't win Game 6 and 7 without him. He is the captain of the ship that steers it. You can't watch Mike Conley play. And again, we're not complaining about injuries. Everyone's injured right now. 90-some games is in, but Mike Conley just doesn't look like himself. Mm-hmm. And I thought again tonight, Mike's been making more weird kind of boneheaded turnovers, or just, tonight he was 2 for 7. He was 1 for 6 from 3, but he was 0 for 5 before he hit that 6th one. If you do have to get into desperation mode and make adjustments, I would just have Nikhil play out there more alongside Ant and Jaden and Karl, Rudy, Nas trio, whatever. But because then you can throw Nikhil on Kyrie, who has a better matchup, and then Ant can kind of float, right? That's your point.
I want Ant to float. That's what I would be thinking about, is how can I not have him as much as possible, like I just said, on Kyrie or Luka. I think that has positive externalities for your offense too. From a fatigue standpoint from Ant, like it is a lot, to be guarding one of those two guys and to be the highest usage guy on offense. Like, we know that. I asked I guess I'll just play this clip. I asked Ant and Jaden kind of how they approached the matchup because there was a lot of interchangeability. I don't know if it was just like random cross matches or what, but I asked them how they handled those matchups.
For both of you guys, you kind of, between the two of you and Nikhil and Kyle as well, kind of cycled who was guarding Luka and Kyrie. How does that work, kind of choosing who gets it, and how did you guys feel like you handled those matchups today?
I mean, if Jaden's in the game and just one of those guys in the game, Jaden is probably going to guard one of them. But if both of them are in the game and it's me and Jaden going to be on them, or if Nikhil, all three of us is in the game and I'm a little tired, I'll tell Nikhil to give me a break. But I think we did a pretty good job, man. Both of them took 24 shots. Luka took 26, Kyrie took 23, actually had 30 and 33. So I think we did a pretty good job.
It was interesting. Go ahead.
Can we just one game? But can we just like talk about that for just a split second to be like, hey, both of them took 24 shots, and actually neither of them took 24 shots. It was just a good moment in time. But back to you.
Oh God, now I'm drawing a blank. I think. Sorry.
On what they were saying and just kind of the switchability of it. I mean, that's also been something we've praised all year, right? Is like,
sure, it is a weapon too.
Ant will randomly, while Jaden is out there, be like, no, I got this. And we saw Ant do that against Jokic. Or he gets so revved up that he's starting to cook because he's a second half guy and a fourth quarter performer. So he'll just no, Jaden, I'm gonna do it. And Jaden has embraced kind of being the not passive, but like, okay, Ant said that, so I'll defer to him. So they're gonna have to find better ways, because what we're trying to get back to is that. I
just wonder if that's a good idea against.
That's my
these
point.
new
Is like
guys.
that's not. I don't think. I mean, Ant got a little clowned post game tonight on like TNT because after he won Game 7, he wasn't even off the court yet, and he was like, "I got Kyrie," And now tonight he had Kyrie, and Kyrie kind of saved them in the first half with those 24 points. So, and again, Ant usually says stuff, and sometimes it bites him in the ass, but then we got to at least acknowledge that he then comes and backs it up, just like he did in the Denver series and the Sun series. So, bigger picture, again, I don't know how, I'm not saying bench Mike Conley or that stuff, but I really like Jaden on Luka, and then if Jaden needs a break or Jaden gets into foul trouble, Kyle Anderson, I think, can do a really good job, and then Kyle probably earned minutes tonight. I did write in my notes for the first 2 minutes, like, Kyle can't play anymore. Then Kyle had his own 7-0 run. So I think his offense was enough to kind of give him some minutes, but
that's huge.
Yeah, on the Kyrie thing, it's got to be a lot of Nikhil. I don't think you're going to keep Ant off the whole time. Like, that's probably right. Ant's going to have to guard Kyrie a little bit.
There was like in the first half, like when Nikhil got in, Ant stayed on Kyrie, and Nikhil was guarding like Jaden Hardy or Josh Green, and that didn't make much sense to me in them. And that was even before Kyrie had. Yeah, I guess that's what I'm trying to get to is like. In the playoffs, we've talked about for every series, like the importance of being like really intentional and meticulous. And each series presents like a different area in which you need to be intentional and meticulous. And I think given the level of shot making and just offensive skill that Luka and Kyrie have, I think you'd need to be as meticulous as possible with that and really thinking about it. I mean, cross matches are going to happen off of misses and stuff like that, but it's going back 2 years now, and not to nitpick the Wolves defense, that is great. They just have this. I mean, we've seen this. We've talked about it for 2 years. It's just like there's sometimes a little bit too casual with like, you just pick him up. You're the closest right now, and it's like, no, like maybe let's just sprint and angle this off. So I got the guy that we want me to be guarding,
And you know what
I think you need that.
The best summary of that was? Ant called it out too post game, but they had a bucket, right, that they got in the second half, and then Kyrie got a layup off of a made bucket. Yeah. And that was Ant's man, but it was the same thing because from my view, it was like Ant was pointing at Kyrie as he was, the X receiver sprinting down the sideline. And it's just a lot of nonchalant, and that's how the whole game went, by the way, like the end of the first half and the fourth quarter, and I'm sure we'll get into that. But yeah, it's my pet peeve. I talked about it in the Denver series. You can't just give up switches. Like if there's no reason to give up a switch, at least try to fight to stay on it or to cut a guy off. So that's an adjustment for sure.
Preset yourself up into the switch that they want by
just giving it to them. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, and that's what I'm saying with the meticulous stuff. Yeah, I have that clip from
Okay.
Ant, which can kind of get us into the fatigue factor.
And you kind of mentioned in the last series with the long layoff between games 2 and 3, you thought that might have affected you. But you kind of alluded to a moment ago. Did you think that the high from game 7 maybe kind of affected you guys coming into today at all?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, y'all can see it was a step behind everybody, especially myself. Kyrie got a transition layup from, I think we scored, and he just outran me. And I was just exhausted, man. So, yeah, for sure. But we'll be all right.
Yeah, I mean, can't play with an exhausted Ant. Like that's almost as bad as a foul trouble Ant, you know. And when we know how important offense is in this, you know, in the playoffs, the Wolves are really struggling to play effective offense whenever he's not himself. There's been, you know, a period here or there where they can kind of carry the day offensively without him, but for the most part, you feel it, you know, when Ant is on the bench in foul trouble or like tonight, fatigued. And I that goes back into what we were talking about before with guarding. I mean, I think you got to keep as much gas in Ant's tank as possible, particularly if he's not seeming like one of the best options to guard those guys. So as far as adjustments go, I'm adjusting around Ant, not in the idea that he can't guard Kyrie or he can't ever like have good possessions guarding Luka, but I'm not sure those are like the guys for him to be doing his awesome isolation defense thing. They're just on a level above that, and to be burning his energy while doing it. I would like to see adjustments there.
And kind of bigger picture to kind of put a bow on the backcourt for Dallas combines for 63 points. Luka had 33, Kyrie had 30, but they scored or assisted, I think, on 85 of the 108 points for the Mavs. And again, glass half full, glass half empty. I mean, why couldn't Luka and Kyrie just combine for north of 60 every game, right? That's kind of what they do. I know Kyrie didn't have 30 at all.
69 in the game that they lost. I think Kyrie had 35 and Luka had 34 in the one time they lost to Dallas this year, which was the one time that both, you know, Kyrie and Luka played there. Also, a game Ant was in foul trouble in the entire time, you know, like
so Kyrie has 30. He didn't have 30 at all in the OKC series, but again, those are two guys that they also went 3 for 13 from 3. So I'm trying to find things to be positive about and things that are going to have to be kind of red flag tomorrow during film session. The other thing too, Luka had 8 assists. All 8 assists were buckets within 3 feet. Like they were all just drop offs or dunks. And you can probably think of everyone lively on the baseline. Derrick Jones Jr. cutting for that dunk. So overall, I mean, as we kind of now transition, I just thought the Wolves, whether it be not paying attention to details on made buckets and then letting, you know, leak outs on fast breaks, that's like one of the basic things, right? You should never give up a basket in transition after you score.
Right.
Just little things. I mean, they played a game tonight, big Jaden night, Kyle, Nas, the guys we talked about at the top, and they would have beat the Hornets by 15, right? Like they would have beat a lot of teams in February and March with a B- level of intensity, and we'll get a couple stops and stuff. But Western Conference Finals, and against this backcourt, a backcourt is kind of designed to just carry them, right? I mean, this is kind of like what Phoenix thinks they are sometimes, with like 2 really super duper offensive players, and then just a bunch of Bradley Beal, like a bunch of role players around. This is the actual version of it, and tonight the Wolves kind of failed the test, whether it be because of just the hangover, which the stats show is a real thing. You lose that first game after a game 7, or just some things that they're going to have to really look at in terms of actual adjustments, because they haven't really had to make any go to one big, right? Like they've still stuck to who they are for most of this playoff run.
They will, yeah.
And they will. But in that, they can still make some adjustments that can hopefully kind of close some of those holes that showed tonight.
Yeah, I think so many of the holes, man, had to do with fatigue and playing tired. And I don't think that's a good excuse to have, but they did play tired. Like you just watch them. There wasn't the energy.
Being
there.
at the game, Anthony Edwards was exhausted. Like there was a possession where he didn't make it to half court until 12 seconds in the shot clock.
Yeah.
And it's not going to get any better, right? Because now it's every other day. So
but it's just that like locked in, you know,
Yep.
of like, and I think they will be. I mean, to this team's credit, when they don't do a thing, and probably to the coaching staff's credit, they are very good and have been all season. It's, you know, why they didn't lose 3 games in a row at any point during the regular season. They stay dialed, or they get back dialed, and correct what was wrong. And for their energy level was not where it needed to be. And I think that not only, you know, showed up with some of the Ant stuff we're talking about, but it showed up in the paint. Kyrie did a lot of his damage, as we talked about, like in the paint. But also that's where the other guys got a little bit involved too, with the drop offs and all those sort of things. Kat was asked about that, and also kind of noted to fatigue there as well.
They had 44 points in the paint in the first half, 62 overall, so 18 in the second half. A lot of those points
from Kyrie.
A lot of it in the first half, obviously.
Yeah.
What adjustments did you make, and did you figure out things? I mean, the improvement was dramatic, but they still got off, and they had lobs. I mean, there's always the lob.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know,
I think one, like I said, the energy. You know, playing with a little more energy will cover up some mistakes in our aggressiveness. I think one thing that everyone in this room knows is that when we're playing Timberwolves the basketball and we're defending at a high level, we do tend to make mistakes, but we make up a lot of those mistakes in aggression and activity. You know, today when you're not having that kind of activity, aggression, it can't be covered up. You know, so I think in the second half, from my perspective, I haven't watched the tape. Obviously, I'm in the moment, but you could see a little more desperation in us, understanding that the game was getting away and the game, you know, time was running down, and we had to give ourselves a chance and pick it up. So I think in that desperation, again, it goes back to our activity and our use of energy, and I think that's why in the second half we did a better job of maybe making them, you know, miss that bunny or, you know, that dunk. You know, Naz Reid has an amazing chase down block in the paint on I believe Jalen Green, or I don't know exactly, but those kind of things, those desperation activity had covered up a lot of our pain points.
I've referenced this a million times this year, Kyle. My way of like, I know it's going to be a good defensive game is just that sort of tenacity in staying attached and fighting and doing what Carl's getting to there. Those small things that are a little bit more effort to make, even if it is a bunny, to make that bunny a little bit more difficult. So the bunny goes in 55% of the time rather than 85% of the time. They have great defensive personnel, but that defensive personnel can only really be weaponized when it has that energy and that fight and that fierceness. And it's not like they had none of that in this game, but at times it cost them, and they didn't make enough of those hustle plays, like the one that Kat's alluding to that Naz had on Josh Green, not Jalen Green. But they just they're going to need that so as to play better defense, so as to force more turnovers, so as to get out on offense, so as to score more easily. They are not a good half-court offensive team. They have never been. This is how they score with teams, and this is how they win. That's Timberwolves basketball, as Carl says every press conference. I mean, that's what has come to, you know, define it. Our successful Timberwolves basketball is all of those elements of the defense acted out at full force, and it wasn't full force, I think, for large chunks of this game.
62-38 points in the paint, Mavs advantage, and then 48-40 rebound advantage for Dallas. Again, you can kind of split the box score and the team stats and kind of find 50-50 of what makes you feel better, what makes you feel worse. Like the Mavs shot, I think, 50% from the field, but they shot 24% from three. But rebound, I mean, you know, we talk about this all the time. Like, playing really good defense is awesome and takes just a want to. but a defensive possession doesn't end until you grab the ball. And those rebound, I mean, kind of gave me flashbacks to the Grizzlies series of just these offensive rebounds that then lead to just second chance opportunities. I know this sounds really rudimentary, but when you give up second chance opportunities and you're a team that, like you said, isn't the best offense in the first place, it's just you're kind of putting yourself behind the eight ball. So those are also just things too, right? I mean, I thought tonight, I don't know what you thought, but Rudy Gobert was really good. I mean, he was a plus 10 when he was out there. When he was off, that's when I thought Lively really did some more damage. Just I don't want to say Rudy was awesome, but
Could have got a couple more rebounds at the end.
Rudy
but
said post game he could have got some more rebounds too, and he said the Ant thing, like I'll be better next game. So hopefully those guys can kind of live up to it. But yeah, you can't get out rebounded and against this team and give them second chance opportunities, because those second chance opportunities, the way that this team rebounds, dude, it just kicks out to Kyrie's and Luka's and PJ Washington's, who are just getting better looks now in the second attempt, and that's going to kill you.
I think where we saw that most was at the end of the game, right? And that's kind of the, I guess, last big topic I have is the late game offense and just overall late game execution was a little concerning. And, to their credit, in the Denver series in game 1, they executed late, won that game. And in game 7, they out executed the best execution team in the NBA during the regular season. That was Denver. I don't think that was as much of a top line item in this series, coming into it, because maybe Dallas wasn't that the entirety of the season, but Dallas is going to get to what Dallas is going to get to at the end of games. Luka you can't put 2 on him and take him out of it. Like he can get to his stuff. Like they have very repeatable things that they are able to do at the end of games that look different than what Denver can do, but they can go to those things over and over again, and you can't really stop them. You can only hope to contain them. And to that end, when you're going against something that's more like of a machine, you really need to be executing on your side of the floor offensively. And there was a handful of things that they fumbled. Jaden had a great game, but that one turnover he had under the basket stands out to me there. It's this hasn't been an area of strength for the Wolves for the entirety of the season. Late game execution was in the Denver series, but to what extent did you think that cost them tonight? And how much of a concern is, if we are having close games here for the entirety of the series, what's your level of confidence in the Wolves' ability to be able to, match what Dallas is going to be able to do offensively through Kyrie and Luka?
I'll answer it this way. I still stand by Wolves in 6 because I really thought the Wolves played pretty bad, and the Mavs have a lot that they can clean up too. But I saw a team that just gave you that February energy level. Now, to your question of how important is closing games in a matchup like tonight, when the biggest lead was, I think, 9 for Minnesota and 8 for Dallas. Like this was a fun basketball game, despite the result not going the way you want, because it was close. I mean, we're coming off a Denver series where every game was a 20-point blowout. But I would see your late game execution and raise you just end of every quarter execution. The final 3 minutes in the fourth quarter were really bad. There was the Jaden turnover that you mentioned, where he drives kind of like underneath the rim and he gets doubled and he just tries to throw it to someone. It gets stolen. That led right away to a PJ Washington 3. 104-102 with like a minute 10 left. Mike gets an opportunity to hit a 3, drives, tries to throw a lob to Rudy. It gets, Luka deflected it. And I think that led to a run out and a basket. But back to the first half, I mean, that's when, remember in the Phoenix series or even some of those Denver games where the Wolves would maybe not play the best, but they'd be down like 3 at half, and you're like, okay, the Wolves didn't play that well and they're down 3. Like, that's good. That was like how Dallas must have felt tonight, to be like, we didn't play it very well. Yeah, Kyrie was cooking, but Luka was bad and we're down 3. I mean, they had in the second and third quarter 2-for-1 opportunities at the end of the quarter, and they got 1 shot out of those 4 potential opportunities. They're up 6, 30 seconds left. Ant throws the ball over Mike's head. They inbound really quick. Kyrie gets a layup. Now it's a 3-point game. Jaden fouls them to end the first half. And then that fourth quarter, they just didn't get any good looks. And that's on Mike, too.
Yep.
I mean, it's on Ant. They kind of got a little heavy tonight again into We don't know what to do. Hear Rudy take the ball. That's not cool. So, yeah, this is, and, credit where credit's due. This is something that kind of was a bugaboo all season that clearly hasn't slowed down this team making the best run that maybe they've ever had. But in a series like this, I was worried about the Denver series, Dane, because the other team had the supercomputer, right? And the Wolves found a way to band together and have just the better team against the PhD in Jokic. They do not have the better closers in this series. They don't have the best closer, and they don't even have the second best closer. And that's no shame to Ant, but Kyrie and Luka are just better at closing games. So they're going to have to tighten that up. And for a team that doesn't always, play the tightest or the most efficient down the stretch, it's probably the one thing that I would peg as like, that's really concerning to me, because that's where you do need Mike out there. Because without Mike, I just don't think they can play grade A graduate school offense in the clutch. And then that flies in the face of how I said, I don't know if Mike should be closing those games because Nikhil should be guarding Kyrie. So I don't know what the answer is. I'm sure you might have an idea, but those end of quarter stuff, man, you can't run really fast for 9/10 of a mile and then just walk, right? You're going to screw up your time. So I thought they screwed up the first half, and that led to them screwing up the end of the game.
No, it's a good point that it wasn't just the fourth quarter. Finch brought that up as well post game when he was asked about the late game execution.
What did you see offensively that kind of made it difficult to sustain in things, especially down the stretch there?
Terrible offense down the stretch. Bad shots, turnovers, no composure. And thought for the same at the end of the first half. We haven't really closed quarters very well, closed halves very well over the last handful of games. It cost us one game in the Denver series. And it certainly had an impact on this game tonight too. So we got to be better in clutch moments.
Horton had this wild fourth quarter, just to kind of sum it up. Minnesota led by 5 with 10 minutes left. Dallas went on a 13-0 run to lead by 8 with 7 minutes left. Minnesota went on a 13-1 run to lead by 4 with 3:15. Then that 3:15 mark is the lively rebound to Luka. Dallas finishes the game on a 10-3 run. So game of runs, but you can't let those two guys that are stone cold killers see a light at the end of the tunnel, especially late in the game, because they have proven time and again to deliver in those moments.
No, absolutely. It is, I think, like you said, an area of concern because it's been an up and down thing all year. I do think, I always say Ant is a hands-on learner, learns from failure, needs to kind of fail to learn. And I think it's gone, the late game stuff or the end of quarters, end of halves is, that's going to be on the film and in practice tomorrow. Like one of those things that Finch will say, we need to do this to win. If we don't do this, we will lose. Which is kind of, just talking to the players and stuff was the message at halftime of game 7. Like they have a handful of things here that they need to do better in game 2 to win. And if they don't, they will lose and they will be down 0-2 going to Dallas. We've listed a handful of things that they did not execute well in this game. I don't think they need to execute every single one of those to be able to win game 2 at home. But if they're not able to put this Dallas team away before the end of the game, if it is somewhat close in the fourth quarter, it is, I think, a bit of a concern, just again, given how repeatable it feels like what Dallas can do offensively late in games or late in quarters versus what the Wolves do late in games. Like you said, okay, we're going to Rudy here again or whatever. Like what are your structures that you are going to execute in those spots? Like they tried to get to that like Cat and Ant pick and pop one, remember? And it was just like the pass was kind of like up here to Cat and he ends up catching it. And he's like 4 or 5 feet behind the line. It's got to be directed, I think, what the offense is and precise within that direction, because they don't just have a Luka that they can go to and you go, here's your step back, every single time, because Ant's more so trying to get downhill there. But I just think there's a handful of things that they could have done earlier in that game that makes it not be close when there's 5 minutes left in it. They could have been up 10, 12 points with five minutes left in the game.
And people, I try to say this to the end, right? Try to spin it a little bit. Not even spin it, but people aren't going to like this. But 72 hours ago was the biggest win this franchise has really ever had. Mm-hmm. Like, that's an actual tangible thing. And then the stats show that you kind of have a hangover period. So to me, I just watching all 48 of that, watching pregame, listening to the guys in the locker room, because it wasn't like a, oh my God, doom and gloom. It was really just like, just kicking yourself. The whole, we had tasks to do over the weekend, and we didn't do them on Saturday, and now we have to do them all on Sunday type thing. So I don't think this team looks at, just because it's a different matchup with less time to prepare and a really dynamic backcourt, is like, oh, we're screwed. But I think they know that they played February basketball in May, and that kind of bit them in the ass. So
yeah,
we'll.
I just would have liked. I'd like to know what not February basketball against Kyrie and Luka looks like. Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah,
we were like talking about.
That's a good point.
Like who's guarding who, and is it like in the mix here? Because I'm looking at this and feeling like there's a little bit of a puzzle right now that they have to figure out, and I'm not sure they actually have all the pieces for. But am I just thinking that because the energy and the effort wasn't there? Probably, But at the same time, I can't sit here and be like, oh yeah, I'm really confident they are going to have the answers for that test or those puzzle pieces, either with effort and more energy and just a greater focus. The odds they can do that are certainly higher, and that leads me to be like, put my level of concern not that high, but there's an element of me too that is like, I'm not sure they have all of the pieces here. So it's kind of came into game one like, I don't really know what to think, because these teams didn't really play each other at all during the season, and now these teams did play each other tonight, but you didn't get the Timberwolves basketball. You didn't get the version of the Wolves that has been the winning version of the Wolves in the playoffs. So I want to see that. I want to see that on Friday. And my assumption would be at home. If you get that, that's a win. But I think you're going to get a better Luka too in game two as well. So I kind of have a lot of like, got to see it in game two to me before I have any sort of feeling or strong feeling one way or the other. But I don't sit here at 1:30 a.m. on May 23rd and think the level of concern is sky high. It needs to happen again, I guess is what I'm saying.
But sign me up for that.
Yeah, for sure.
You know what I mean? Like, that's the best thing you've said in the last hour is May 23rd. Like, give me, the Phoenix thing, back to my original point, was you had a week to kind of recover from getting embarrassed and now scout and get in the best shape. And then the Denver series, that was, your final boss in a sense of they knocked you out last year, the connections and all the Tim Connolly stuff and just how the rosters are built. This is the Western Conference Finals. You have games every other day for the next 10 days or the next week and a half, and you're going to have to figure this out. And it sucks to lose that first game, but teams that lose game one at home win like exactly 50% of the time in those series. So it's still pretty much a coin flip. You're down one. The Wolves are 3-3 at home in the playoffs and 5-1 on the road. It's another random little nugget, but I get it if you're mad and you wake up on Thursday and you're like, I can't believe I fell for it again. But if you haven't, this team deserves at least the ability to come out on Friday and adjust and show you what they did in practice on Thursday, because they're also down 3-2 to the defending champs, and then they won by 50, and then they won a Game 7 on the road. So how does this play out? I don't know, because I think it's a much, not harder challenge, but so much more unique, to your point, and you have way less time to figure it out. And your leader is saying post-game that they're kind of tired, so you don't have a lot of time to rest. Mm-hmm. But I love it. I thought there were some cool Denver games, but a lot of them were blowouts, right? It was just one big haymaker, and then the team would fold and then go on to the next game. I thought both those teams tonight had a chance to win. I mean, the Wolves win that game, we're probably doing 30 minutes on Carl's 3 from 32 feet. Like, that was a big shot and a big moment for a guy that is really putting together a resume, and it didn't matter because they didn't pull it out. So tighten up the glass, I think, would be a big one. Figuring out their rotations and who's going to guard who on defense, as small as that sounds. Like, I just think Jaden's got to be on Luka a lot of the time and just make his life hell. And the Mavs are going to have a PJ Washington 20-point game. You know what I mean? Like, they're going to shoot better from 3 too. So before I go, that was like the one thing I had to ask the expert. 89 shot attempts for the Wolves, and 49 of them were threes. Like, I guess we could talk about it an hour ago, but like, do you think that's not? I don't love that. Is that wrong?
But I think that's the way in which, but we were talking about the rim protection and the way, like, they're leaving the big.
It's a lot of threes
back at the rim, and they're rotating over. So I think the way to get more twos, I think, starts with Ant, and it's downhill rhythm into mid-range jump shots and hitting a couple of those so as to force the big to come up a little bit more, so as to then the big's up a little bit more. And now you can kind of like in between dribble and get that all the way to the rim there. It's like Jaden hit his first 3 threes in the first like 5 minutes of the game. And then he got that one in the corner and Luka closed out at him like it was Steph Curry. Boom, right? And then that's Jaden takes a dribble, finds Rudy at the basket for a dunk, or I think Rudy got fouled there. But it's that sort of stuff. We talked so much last round about like, given the way Ant was guarded, somebody else had to get going so as to loosen up the defense. So Ant didn't have to play against a loaded up defense. Well, that's not what the Dallas's plan is here. Dallas's plan is to take away the rim. Okay, so you're going to take away the rim. How are you going to punish that otherwise so they can't be, lined up like a wall in front of the rim? There's certain things you can do that'll force them to adjust even over the course of the game, and that's just what they have to do. I think Ant in the middle of the floor is a weapon. If they're under control, not like leaning, like fake jumpers. I'm talking about the like downhill 1-2 pull up 16 feet, knock it down. Like Ant can hit that at a high clip. I think that's kind of where this starts. That's where you loosen it up here. Last thing I just want to say, I was going to forget this. Remember what Kevin Durant did in game 1, and the Wolves won that game, but it looked like, man, I don't know if I think KD is going to have 35 every single game. And that's how I'm kind of feeling about Kyrie Irving right now. Yeah. But that didn't happen, with Kevin Durant. And I think that's a good reminder there too. I think even just in what I've said over the hour of this episode, I've been baking in a lot of repeatability from Kyrie and Luka. I'm not sure you do get the tag team or the overall efficient game from the both of them every single time, because the Wolves are a hell of a defensive team that when they adjust, they can make things difficult for even the Kevin Durant's of the world, even the Nikola Jokic's of the world. Like, so they can make it more difficult on Kyrie Irving. I think that's where I would start. The Luka element of it is you just play that hard. You can't. There's not too many different adjustments you can do to him because he kind of has a counter for everything in that sort of way. But I think the Kyrie piece is big. And can you maybe let's not assume he's going to do that again, even though that's what it feels like right now.
And that's why at the top I said this wasn't the best game of the now 12 playoff games the Wolves have played, but it was the most exciting as a basketball fan because I don't know all the answers. I mean, this is we went from checkers against the Suns to chess against the Nuggets to this is like a Rubik's Cube, and you have to do it really fast and figure it out. So I'm with you on, I don't know if Kyrie's going to have another 30-point game, but then I don't know if Derek Jones Jr. and PJ Washington.
I think he will have another one. The question is he going to have 7 of them? Or,
PJ Washington and Derek Jones Jr. are going to combine 2 for 10 from 3. I think OKC fans now are probably watching this, just like Nuggets fans watch the Wolves and be like, man, I wish we would have had that. And
sure.
I think OKC fans are. This isn't a question, but I'm going to leave you with this because this was the last thing in my notes, but our friend Jake Painting summed it up much better than I could with stats. So something to think about for tomorrow. The Wolves played 5 minutes and 49 seconds tonight worth of lineups with no Towns and Ant on the floor.
Yeah.
The Mavs played 3 seconds without Luka or Kyrie on the floor.
Hated the start of the fourth quarter lineup out there.
And as Jake said, this is the Western Conference Finals. You got to be smarter than that. So almost 6 minutes without both of them on the floor, or like with neither of them on there. And the Mavs basically said, we're going to play the entire game with one of those two guys on the court.
Yeah, that I don't know where the other. So Jake said it was 6 minutes. I know the first 3 minutes because I wrote this down. The first 3 minutes of the fourth quarter was Rudy, Nas, Jaden, Nikhil, and Conley. And Ant had played the whole third quarter, so I'm not saying Ant had to be out there. There's always the like temptation to be like, why did Ant like leave the game? Well, he was already tired, you know.
Because
like,
he has to take a breath.
Yeah, he's just not really able to play more than 12 straight minutes. But
only 34 minutes for Carl, right? 41 for Ant. But
so I think in that one in particular, because I was gonna like tweet out like, cause just like this is a stupid lineup. But then I was looking at it, Nas kind of got going at the end of the third.
That's true. That's fair.
And so I think that's why they let that ride.
Okay.
With that group, rather than because Carl checked out with 4 minutes left in the third and didn't come back until 3 minutes into the fourth. And you're like, okay, that's a long break right there, right? And again, Nas was rolling, Carl wasn't having a good game. So it is kind of the hindsight thing where I'm here like, oh, stupid lineup, like you're not, is it hindsight, results based, all that? But, after the fact, it did feel like, it felt like too much time with neither of them on the floor. I think that's a fair point.
And the counter to that, as I'm Leonardo DiCaprio just kind of pointing at my screen, Nas did kind of find a rhythm, and he was the team worst minus 11. Not that plus minus is everything, but that's the Rubik's Cube of this. Is like, I thought Nas was kind of cooking. Maybe that's why they went with that lineup. It's like actually plus minus, he was, the least impactful.
He wasn't very good defensively. I think that's where you feel that.
I think that would be, as we kind of look forward now, we got a big, fun 80-degree drink beers and talk to a former NBA player who's been to the finals, Jim Pete. So I'm sure he's got some ideas on how to adjust for game 2. And then as we look forward to game 2, play your guys a little more, and then you just got to be tighter. This is, as Jake said and as we've said, like this is the Western Conference Finals. This is not late April or early May. This is with a chance to go win a title. So everything's got to be crisper. There's no room for being tired. And I would imagine like they've done every time we've had these sad pods, they respond. So Friday's going to be awesome. Friday's going to be an awesome, awesome basketball game.
And like you said, and tomorrow night at Falling Knife will be as well. We'll hope to see many of you there. It'll be more of me and Kyle talking, but also we'll get some Brit and
I'm not going to talk at all.
Jim Pete. Yeah,
let
me
Jim
neither.
and Brit talk.
No, but it'll be fun, and we'll see you there, Kyle. Appreciate you flying out here and staying up late tonight. We'll do it. We'll do it again tomorrow night. We'll do it again on Friday night after game 2. You guys can all follow Kyle on Twitter at Kyle Theige. I'm Dane at DaneMooreNBA. Until tomorrow at Falling Knife, he's Kyle. I'm Dane. Peace out.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Green and hot so you can find me in the crowd, yeah. Don't let standards ever bring you down, yeah.